Welcome back to another Web Dev Podcast episode where we help aspiring developers get jobs and junior developers grow. In this episode, we are diving into the topic of women becoming software engineers. We've had several women in my community kind of just asking and fearful and just wanting to know, like how difficult is it for a woman to become a software engineer? What's it like in tech? And so I'm bringing on Zynkah, who has been a mod in our community for a long time. We do live streams. She's always there. People love her. She's really inspirational to a lot of the women in my community. And she actually live streams on Twitch. Check her out. It's just twitch.tv/Zynkah. And you can see her name in the bottom left. But yeah, I'm just going to dive into the topic of, tips, advice, perspective on women becoming a software engineer. So we're going to have a pretty candid conversation. It's a pretty controversial topic, but Zynkah doesn't shy away from controversial topics. In fact, I remember talking to her because sometimes we get comments in the live streams like, hey, how difficult is it for a woman to become a software engineer? I heard that, it's a male dominated. A lot of the industry doesn't let women in. There's a bit of a gatekeeper thing. And I remember you rolling your eyes at that. So let's start off with that. What do you think about that?
I don't think anyone's keeping women out of tech. I think this is just like a misconception because more men go for tech jobs. So it seems like only men are doing tech jobs. But I've never had anyone tell me we're not going to hire you because you're a woman, or lose a position because I'm a woman, or be treated differently because I'm a woman. I just don't think there is someone saying no, she's a woman, don't hire her. I don't think that's happening.
Yeah. And there's a feeling that's really common among women with that. It's really common. Why do you think it's so common?
I think it's just because they're told that and they don't know any better. And when you hear something enough, you believe it's true, especially if you have no experience, on your own behalf, own anecdotal experience, where it's if you've never worked in tech, if you've never, actually had a development role yet, you would be oh, that's what everyone says, it must be true. But I don't know, I just think it's just a big lie.
So I reviewed and looked into some women's only coding bootcamps, and I think I've gotten I've realized how common this can become with women that graduate even these types of programs or that listen to advice from these types of programs. And I remember having a conversation with this woman who was just really frustrated. She was trying to become a software engineer. I think she had spent maybe a little less than a year, in my opinion, not too long trying to become a developer. And I remember she was talking about her women's only coding bootcamp, who basically really emphasized this in the cohort, you're just going to have a harder time. Generally, men are not going to kind of see you as an equal. They're not going to be as open and accepting to you coming into their industry. And it was a lot of very interesting wording that, quite frankly, reflected more on their perspectives of men than how they were going to be treated by men. And that kind of opened my eyes to different advice for women in tech trying to get into tech and where their imposter syndrome potentially stems from. But I remember I was talking to her and, I was trying to be empathetic. She had these legitimate concerns and she's like, you know what? I've tried everything. I'm going to probably have to change my name because it doesn't even sound American. I'm applying for American companies and I got to do something to hide my gender on my resume and my LinkedIn. And I think maybe I'm just going to delete my picture. And I'm okay, that's a lot of steps and actions that you feel like you have to take because, of something of your gender. So before we jump into that, let's go to the root of what makes you stand out as a software engineer. And I looked at her resume. I looked at her portfolio. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. The resume was terrible. It spoke nothing to about her being a software engineer. A lot of her old positions weren't even tech focused, no leadership focused. And I looked at her portfolio. Very, very, very basic CRUD apps, terrible accessibility. And she was trying to apply for every dev position possible. None of it spoke to any specific type of position that made her stand out. And she was willing to go to so many lengths to hide her gender, thinking it was that. I can't imagine the amount of like stress and anxiety and imposter syndrome you just push and enable in yourself to think, okay, well, and I can understand that it's frustrating if you have this perspective, but so many women that have a feeling that they're just not getting in because of this perspective, because they're a woman, like I can narrow it down to, I could provide a list of like 12 to 24 bullet points for them about, like, quite frankly, how low their skill level is, how badly they're presenting themselves, how are they engaging with other developers, how are they networking, what does networking even mean? And I learned that they're not taking certain actions to build their connections, they're not doing the right things, they're not building the right projects. But it's so overwhelming to see so many women just like not focus that energy into the right things. I think that's the frustrating thing. There's so many things you can do, and you have all this energy just enabling all this anxiety over something that is an extreme minority in the industry. And that to me kind of woke me up about people and just kind of women being a little bit more scared to enter this industry. I'll pause there. What do you think about that?
She's definitely had, like, I'm guessing the person who told her all those things was probably another woman.
Yes.
They made her focus so much on the wrong things that she was probably spending too much time and energy, as you said, worrying about her name. My name's foreign. That's never been a problem. Worrying about her gender, worrying about all these things instead of focusing on her passions and presenting herself. I mean, that's one thing I was told in both my internship and when I got my first job was that they liked the way I showed the passion in what I was doing, because both of those projects were something that was very important to me. You know, the Maid Cafe was something that, I love anime, I love cutesy stuff. So it just spoke to me. And the internship was for a bakery site. So they were like, this is pretty much perfect, and then also like Final Fantasy and, learning next and trying to that's what made me shine for that position too. Like how I put 9 months into a side project doing every day, live streaming, making a fool of myself because I just learned it, that's what they said. They were like, your presence, your drive, your passion, that's what made you stand out. And if she focused more on that, she probably would have had more success than worrying about like, oh, I have a foreign name, I'm a woman. Because I never thought about that. That never is like even a thought in my mind. And like, I've heard the exact opposite in the industry from men. Men have told me, like senior devs that were, around me would tell me, you're going to get special treatment because you're a girl. You're going to shine more because you're a girl. Like you are an abnormality. You know what I mean? Like they're not used to seeing that. Like, who is this? So I feel like the person who was telling her that, maybe she had some bad experiences and was projecting that upon everyone instead of like listening to other people, like I said, you remember the one bad thing instead of the 10. I think she was just focusing on the one bad thing. So like, just focus on your portfolio. Like you said, we all have crappy portfolios, especially a year in, like mine still sucks 2 years in. So like, just focus on your work, focus on learning, and focus on, showing the passion and the drive, because people will hire you even if you don't have the skill set, if you have the right attitude. Like that's way more important. The willing to learn and being a team player, having a good personality, being able to work with other people and not rubbing them the wrong way. Like that's way more important. So if you're a woman looking to go into tech, focus on that. Don't worry about changing your name or hiding your photo. That's a huge waste of time.
Yeah, it is. It's a huge waste of time. It's a waste of energy. You only have so much mental energy to dedicate to becoming a software engineer, which is already a really overwhelming thing to do long term to keep up that steam. It sucks to see so many women burning out because of that. But like you said, like a lot of people latch on to a single bad experience and it will override, you know, 9 other great experiences they've had. And they'll kind of like perceive like, okay, well, is this same bad thing happening? Am I being discriminated against because, you know, some other woman said I would be? Like, has that kind of been injected into my personality, into my perspective? Like it snowballs into just a blocking into a blocking perspective where you don't get to follow your passion. Like if you're stressed about this other stuff, you don't get to dig into coding, be curious, have fun with it, build something that like reflects your hobbies or problems you want to solve. Like how the hell are you supposed to have fun with this thing when you have this other boogeyman towering over you that someone else projected into you? Like that's, like you said, it's about attitude. Like I'm telling you, a lot of guys, like we just want to bring in good, humble software engineers. We just want to work with developers that we can stand to work with, you know, for the whole day.
Yeah.
Like, that's the reality. And like, are you going to be kind of constructive in the code reviews? Are you going to be a dick? Are you going to take every single feedback that we say really personally? Or are you going to be humble about it and just realize, hey, you know, everyone's just helping each other grow here. Now, to be fair, you can get in some older code bases in older environments, and just developers have been doing this for a long time that kind of have created a bit of a boys club. I'm not going to pretend like there aren't those types of teams, but generally they don't usually bring on high quality software engineers that are great to work with. I tend to think that like most teams just kind of want a diversity of opinion and different people. And I think a lot of guy developers, like you said, like a new woman coming onto the team, we haven't had a woman because they're not signing up for tech. And I think part of that is, you know, maybe we got to show kind of an opportunity of tech for a little bit more women earlier on. But, you know, like I think a lot of guys just want whoever wants to be a good software engineer is humble, we want to work with, come to tech. That's it. And I think that would enable a lot of women to realize that. But yeah, a lot of guys, they enjoy just having good software engineers that are friendly to work with. That's it. It's that simple. And you know, the Final Fantasy thing and your love for anime, I like that you unapologetically push that and drive into that in all of your live streams and like everything about you, because you show like what you're actually passionate about. And I feel like just more developers in general need to do that. But like I feel like you just are transparent with who you are. How are you so comfortable doing that without being judged?
I guess it's from all the years of being judged. You know, since I am a millennial, when I was younger, like anime and video games were not cool, not like how they are now. And I was picked on and I didn't care. I was like, this is what I like. And if you don't like it, then I don't care, you know? And like, I don't know, it's just been a big part of who I am. And I'm not shy about it. You know, it's a part of my identity. It is part of who I am. And I don't know, now it's cool. Now it's accepted. People love it. So it's perfect, you know? Like you bring up those two things and automatically you're gonna have a group of people who like you know? So I don't know, like that's how I do it. I don't know. I'm just a naturally outgoing person too. I've never been shy. I grew up with an army dad, so like I'm used to people being tough on me. You know, went to Dodd schools where every teacher is a retired first sergeant, you know, like so I don't know, just I have a lot thicker skin and like I'm proud of who I am. I'm flawed, but I like who I am and I have no problem showing that and being that. And obviously people like it, you know. They always say I'm genuine, so I guess that's a good thing. You know, it makes me, like I said, it makes me stand out. And people should do that more. Like, don't be shy of who you are. You know, don't worry about like, is this socially acceptable? Is this cool? Just be yourself and people will respect you for that, you know?
They do. People do
Yeah.
respect you, even if they disagree with you. If you say it unapologetically and you believe it, they do respect you for it. And I think ultimately a lot of people just want respect at the end of the day. I like it. All right.
Yeah.
I made a community post asking like, hey, as a woman trying to become a developer, what are your worries? So I got a few comments. I'm going to go ahead and read them, and I'd love for you to respond to them. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, cool. I guess a big question I can think of is pay, because I've seen it come up a few times where women are paid less for equal positions, possibly due to negotiation skills. Or sometimes I wonder if hiring managers are old school thinking a woman will have a man to pay a mortgage for them, but it's not 1950, and I know I want to eventually earn enough to get myself a mortgage.
Well, like they said, negotiation is probably a huge thing. I know that in my first job, I lowballed and he was like, "You're worth more than that," and gave me more. So thankfully, I got someone who was not shady, and like the amount was like something way more than I expected. So I was like, just took it, So like I don't have no more experience other than that one position, that one situation. So I can't really say, consistently if it'll always be that way. Maybe I just got lucky once. I know this is something you hear in a lot of different industries, but like I said, I don't know what my coworkers are making. I'm not going to ask them. I feel like that's rude. And also our skill level is very different. That's a huge thing. Like I came in out of first a boot camp and then internship, like I didn't have all this experience. So the fact that I got what I got, I felt really grateful for, like so maybe in my next role, we'll see how things go, like what I'll be offered. I just don't know any situation though where I'm going to be asking my male counterparts, like, how much are you making? And like try to, compare our stack and our skill level and our years of experience and try to like, there seems like, especially in tech, there's so many variables that would qualify your pay, like where it's just like, I can't just say, oh, I only got this pay because I'm a woman. No, like I said, my lack of experience, I'm sure had a huge play in how much I was getting paid. So, I mean, I wish I had more to say on that, but like I've only had one job, so I don't have much more input on that. But I feel like I got a fair shake, so far.
I mean, for only having one job, I think that's really good insight. You mentioned a couple of things. One, there are people that believe that because you hold the same title, because you do the same things, you deserve the same pay. You don't do things as effectively or as fast or as responsibly. You don't document things as well. Like there are so many other variables, but you don't necessarily do things as well as the other person just because you hold the same title. There is a skill gap. There's also a history of like how quickly is this person going to be able to ramp up based on their previous education. And like there are a lot of variables at play that are going to affect your salary. I like 100% disagree. I think it's BS when people are like, I deserve to get paid the same as every other software engineer that has been here 1 year. No, you have different experience. You have different skill levels. You provide different value to versus other people on the team. Like, I think people have a huge, I think it's the wrong way to look at it. But one thing that you did note, negotiation. Women generally measure much higher with agreeableness than men do. And that is like agreeableness tends to have a negative correlation with essentially how much you can stretch that salary in that negotiation. And that is a factor. And I think a lot of women need to be a little bit more assertive and aggressive and understand their value. And I think that's the answer, right? And to be honest, like women aren't having, it's not just women having this problem. When you are just going into the industry, I was nervous about negotiating. I'm like, they're going to just toss it. I'm not worth this much. There's no way. Like there's a lot of men that feel the same way, but generally men are a little bit less agreeable. And so they will push a little bit more often. And statistically, they will probably negotiate higher. But I think that's just a message to women. You got to fight for what you're worth a little bit more.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, this is like natural stuff, like I said, when you look at it, women are more agreeable. I do believe that is true, like, you have to fight it. If that really is something that is super important to you, where it's like, I want more pay, I feel like I'm worth more pay, then voice that opinion. Let them know. They can't read your mind. And also, like, not everyone's going to be nice. Some people are like, well, if I can get away with paying you 50K, I'll pay you 50K. And if you're worth more, stand up for yourself, you know? And if they say no, they say no. Okay, well, maybe you got to look for another job, Like, it's not the world's responsibility to stand up for you. That's definitely your responsibility.
Yes, 100%. And a lot of times, like them just pushing back and saying, it's not in our budget is not a no either. It's
Exactly.
then you got to think about it like, okay, am I getting paid enough? Can I negotiate anything else besides salary? And there are a lot of other things you can negotiate. Um, but yeah, okay. Yeah, one job in, that was actually really good insight for that question. All right. Next question. I just clicked into the wrong one. Okay. So, some background about me. I attended a boot camp in 2022, got a web developer position 5 months afterwards, and this year recently started a software engineer role. For me, many of the struggles of trying to find a job were the same as a man. One thing I can think of is that I was worried about not fitting into the boys' club, and along with that, not being able to match their culture.
Well, I mean, did she? I don't know. Like, that's the thing. Like, if you're afraid of not fitting in the culture, I mean, maybe, I don't know. I always grew up with like a mixed group of friends. Like, I didn't just hang out with the girls. Like I said, I guess a lot of it had to be with me being a gamer, like I hung out with a lot of guys. I never felt like I didn't fit in with the guys. I never felt like, oh, this is only a guy's thing. Like, yeah, tech might be male dominant, but it's not a men's thing, like it's for anyone, it's for everyone. And if you have the common interest of tech and programming and coding and all that stuff, like, then you're already in the club. What are you talking about? Like, I don't know, maybe I don't understand. Like, what do you mean you're not going to fit in? I know there's some, like you said, I know there's some men who are like that. Yes, some, but that's going to be a minority, in my opinion. I mean, even like I said, I see it in the gaming community too. Like, some men are like, women can't play video games, but like, that's such a tiny, tiny minority. And I've been playing video games like almost for 30 years, and I've never had someone like be that dead serious, like large groups of it, where I felt like I didn't belong. I always felt like I belonged. So it's kind of like the same thing. Like, you're already in the club. What do you just just make the best out of it, If you sit there and the whole time like, as a woman, you're probably gonna annoy everyone. Just be there as a person, and you're probably gonna get along with everyone just fine, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's where some of the frustration comes from. It's when people hyper focus on things like gender instead of holding themselves accountable for other things they're fucking up, right? And I think that's where people get frustrated. But that's what happens with people that do hyper focus on these kind of things. They don't look inward outside of something superficial like that, and they're not critical about like, maybe I'm just not maybe I'm not a fun person to be around. Maybe I'm too nervous to talk to people and it comes off weird. Like, maybe those are just things you need to practice and it has nothing to do with you being a woman, right? And then if you're willing to dig into that stuff, like you said, that's when you start realizing these situations that happen, any sort of sexism in tech, it's an extreme minority. And even men don't want to talk with other men that do that crap, right? Because they're not generally like, that's going to carry over into other traits, and they're not great people to talk with. Which is why I think like teams like that have mostly died off, which is a good thing. But yeah, you could just psych yourself out and it just prevents you from growing and focusing on all the good qualities about you. It's frustrating to see sometimes, but okay.
It's kind of like that phrase you hear, like, it's not if it's everyone else, then maybe it's you, kind of thing. And you'll see that in many scenarios, Maybe you should self-reflect. If there's a massive group of people and no one likes you, maybe it's your personality, maybe it's how you're talking to people, maybe you're playing the victim card too much and people are getting annoyed by it, like, that's a lot of stuff that's gonna push people away. If, like I said, if you're genuine, you're happy, you're nice, you're genuinely pleasant to be around, most people are gonna like you. Like, that's what people like. People like friendly, nice people. So just
Yeah.
be that.
Yeah, that's great advice. It's a hard pill to swallow, especially when we talk about victimhood, but it's the truth in a lot of situations. All right. So, last serious comment I got. So, I am a Caucasian woman and have been a software developer since the late 90s. For me, I feel it's mostly subconscious things. We're probably going to break this one up a bit. I am a competitive person, but find myself less competitive around males. Like, I really don't want to fight for this. It probably comes down to how ambitious you are. If you just want to work in tech, that is doable because I think many companies want diversity. Okay, so I don't think that's part of the question. But what do you think about that? Do you feel less competitive, or do you think a lot of other women are less competitive with men and more competitive with women?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that comes down to our DNA. Like, of course, women are going to compete with other women and they're more agreeable with men. Like, I mean, you can fight it, but it's just how it is. For most women, that's kind of our default mode, like, and that's okay. If that's how it is and you see that's how it is and you're aware of it, you know, work on either fixing that or work on just accepting it, one of the two. I find like I'm most competitive with myself. Like I'm constantly telling myself like who I was yesterday, I'm trying to be better tomorrow and like constantly like I don't really try to focus so much on what other people are doing, more of like what I'm doing and how I can improve. So like that's where my competitiveness is usually happens. I don't really find like other women in the industry as like threats or anything like that. It's like not a big deal for me. And I do find like I am more agreeable with men, but I'm more agreeable with everyone in general. I'm just an agreeable person in general, you know? So I don't really think it matters the gender per se, but yeah, I could see how she's saying I would probably be more agreeable with men when I really, really look at it. Maybe it has something to do with like the whole, like I said, old school thought of thinking of men being dominant and all that stuff. But I mean, if it's a problem and you're aware of it, work on it. It doesn't bother me, because it's not like I said, focus in my life. My focus is just making myself a better person every day. And that's really all I want to worry about. Like I find a camaraderie with people, not like a competitiveness. Like maybe it's because of my lack of experience and my position where I'm at right now with being a junior, where I see everyone as a mentor and like as a guide. Maybe I'll feel different when I'm in a higher role, like a senior role. Maybe the competitiveness will kick in then because I'll feel like at that point I'm now in charge. So since she's in that position, she's been a dev, since the 90s? I'm gonna guess she's in senior position. So her perspective is gonna be vastly different than mine. Like she probably is competing with other senior devs. So I can see where she's coming from for sure. I haven't experienced it myself, but I could definitely see that, like being more competitive and less and like, trying to exert your experience in the position, but feeling like you have to step down because you might feel a little intimidated by a male, coworker or something. I see where she's coming from, but I don't think that's has to be the way. Like if you don't want that, like I keep saying, just don't do that then. I don't know. Like I feel like a lot of people's problems are fixable. Like I don't know how else to say it. Like that's just my point of view. I don't have that problem yet. Talk to me in 20 years.
I think you are going to have that problem for a while. And I think it's because of your personality. I've worked with women as developers who were very relaxed and very respected in their positions. And they kind of like their leadership and their guidance was well respected, but there was a confidence about them that was just respectable.
Yeah.
Just like another guy's confidence. It was respectable. There are men that I don't respect because they have no confidence and they're insecure and they lash out at people. And like, I think it's just about the confidence that you have and how you portray that. And, you know, I'm thinking of one woman in particular where everyone on the team respected her opinion and looked up to her. And she ended up leaving, actually, for a different, better position, if I remember correctly, at a different company. And, you know, good for her. But I don't know what the variables were to cause her to leave, because I just had joined the company and she left. But, you know, getting to know her, like, I learned a lot from her. And even when I would kind of push back on something like, why do you do it this way? Isn't that kind of inefficient or kind of hard to maintain or something like that? And, you know, there were times where it's like, yeah, you know, you have a good point, but you have to remember this context and this code base. And she didn't take it personally. It was just, she just like literally listened to me and she heard what I had to say. And with confidence, she showed it, why it was a bad idea of what I was suggesting. And she did it in very like, she was very empathetic with how she talked to people, how she did her code reviews. Like, she just did it in a way where she made everyone feel good and she was confident doing it. There was like no insecurity. And then I've worked with another woman who, you know, she didn't take code reviews well and she took things personally. And I feel like there are some women just, it might be a little bit easier to kind of just like lean on. Again, it's like, it's not me, it's not my confidence, it's not how I portray myself, it's my team, it's external circumstances. This is the reason, it's everyone else. And it's like, I guess my big question for you is, how can other women build the confidence that you can? Because your personality is going to do very well in tech. You're going to be very respected in tech. How can other women become this?
I think the number one issue I've just dealt with in general with working with women in any industry is they're too emotional a lot of the times, and they take things, like you said, too personal. You really need to remove yourself from the situation. Sometimes it's just a bad situation. It's not about you, you know, and if you just like being humble is a huge part of it. Like, no one wants a girl coming in there and being bossy and catty and annoying. No one likes that, you know, man or woman. So really, if you have this like boss babe mentality, I'm going to come in and tell everyone what to do, drop that. Just drop that now. No one likes it. That will be your first step. And like, learn to be humble, learn to listen to people, learn to be understanding, you know, like respect the person on the bottom as much as you respect the person on the top kind of mentality, you know, just like be there for everyone. Don't get emotional. Don't get angry. You know, like a lot of the issues I've had with female employees or managers, it was that type. And like you said, the ones that I very much respected, that everyone respected, were the ones who were cool, calm, collected. They would treat you with like proper respect. They would, you know, they had just had a way they carried themselves. And that's like where you really need to focus on. Stop focusing so much on asserting your dominance and like trying to imitate what you see as the toxic male dominant like mentality. It's like, well, if we can't beat him, then be one. Like, no, don't do that. Work on your positive traits, what you bring to the table, and just like be open to things. Don't be so closed-minded, and don't take things so personally, and don't be so invested emotionally in everything. Like, and I feel like that's going to get you a lot further in not just tech, in any industry, and in life and in relationships and in friendships and just everything, you know, like the way you carry yourself, and just look at things outside of your perspective for just a minute. You know, it's not always about you.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice. I couldn't have said that better myself. Yeah, wow. And I think you're going to start seeing similar patterns, even like when trying to become a developer, getting into the tech industry. You're going to see that in your friendships, your relationships. A lot of that personality that carries over and built like the confidence that you have based on your previous life experiences, you're going to see a pattern. So if you go into this industry and you find a lot of hurdles, a lot of troubles, and you're not able to connect with people, I don't think that originated from tech. I think that originated before tech, and you probably should be more self-critical about that. But that's advice for men and women, but overall, yeah. Listen, this is why people love your live streams. Like you're just very insightful, and you're critical of yourself enough to like constantly be willing to grow. And it's kind of I guess one final question I want to ask is like how the live streaming is going, because it's you kind of get a mix of emotions, and not every day is the best day, and some days you get frustrated. Some people frustrate you, trolls that come in and everything. But you've been live streaming for a little bit. How's that going? What's the good and the bad from it?
The good is that you're gonna get a lot of like ideas for your program that you wouldn't naturally come up on your own. You're gonna get like a lot of inspiration to do things you wouldn't naturally do on your own. Like why are you doing it this way? You're gonna get asked why a lot, which is gonna make you think why a lot. Where like when you're on your own, it's like this is what I do, and I can just copy, repeat, and you just get stuck in like this one path and one thought. The downside is you will get sidetracked in another way too. Like you're just trying to work on your code and everyone's fighting over like what the margin should be or if there should be a border or not. And it's like, guys, we've moved past that. Like 20 minutes later, it's like, so how many pixels are we going to make the border? We're over it. Okay, we're moving on. And like sometimes you sit there and you talk to chat for like 20 minutes and you haven't written a single line of code. So like things like that happen. You have a trade-off where you're going to be a little sidetracked, but you also, like I said, you're going to meet a lot of people who do know what they're talking about, and you'll recognize them in chat pretty quickly. Whereas, okay, this person is not a troll. They're actually obviously experienced. They know what they're talking about. They're here to actually give good insight, and you'll start paying more attention to their chat, and you'll start tuning out the other ones, and you got to use the block button sometimes. Like I give people a lot of chances. I don't block people very easily, but if it's like day 3 and it's to the point where like I don't even want to acknowledge your text anymore, okay, I'm gonna block you. So like those are like the downsides. But I don't know, overall, I like it. Like I said, it's really helped me grow a lot. It's introduced me to a lot of concepts I wouldn't know on my own to like seek out looking on my own. I'm really bad at UI, so like having people's inputs, like what do you guys think? Like should I do this, should that? Do a little poll. The decision's made, move on. Like I feel like that I can make decisions based off what the client wants and needs more. Because when you're programming, you just think, oh, this makes sense to me. Then I was like, of course that's clickable. Isn't it obvious? But then the person's like, wait, what's going on here? And it's like, okay, now you're thinking more on how a person who's not writing the code would think. And like that's a huge like on the spot feedback, benefit of live streaming is just like people who are not programmers. Like I have a lot of people who are not programmers in the chat and they're just like asking questions like, how does this work? It makes me rethink how I'm making everything. And I love it. I'm really sad that I took such a large break when I did, but it's okay. Better now than never, right? Things are going pretty well. Hopefully it stays that way. The bigger the crowd, the more trolls, but I can handle it just fine. It never bothered me none. Like I grew up in Halo 2, chat stuff and everything. I'm good. I'm going to be fine. Like there's nothing they can tell me that's going to hurt my feelings. So I'm not really too worried about trolls or anything. The trolls are only as bad as you feed them, so if you just don't feed them, they won't be a problem. And I really like, I said, all the feedback and the community that's growing and the code talk and being introduced to things that, like I said, I would never think of on my own, getting articles shared and, like different solutions and ideas. So I'm really looking forward to sticking to it this time and not abandoning it like last time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, do it for as long as it serves you. If you're having a good time, you're enjoying it. Sometimes life circumstances come up. That's okay. If you got to step away from it, that's okay. But yeah, I'm really glad you're enjoying it. I actually just had one specific question. So sometimes you just block people, you don't ban them, so you just don't see their chat?
Block ban, it just matters, I guess, what I'm on. I think Twitch is just called a ban, right?
Oh,
so
okay.
Same
Gotcha.
thing, or like, if someone's annoying me like on YouTube or Discord, just block them, block ban, same thing. But like I said, it's really rare. I think I've blocked or banned maybe 4 people ever. So it's not like I'm crazy about it, but like, yeah, if someone's like, asking like obviously inappropriate questions, and it's just like, okay, you just got to go. My mod's really good about it too, though. Like he's always usually like removing things before I can even see it. So I don't have
Yeah.
to worry about it too much.
Yeah, that's awesome. He's a good mod. All right, cool. Well, I was just curious about that. I think more people should consider live coding, see if it works for you. For some people it does, for some people it doesn't. I think it's a cool way to get a little motivation. And just, if you're not really feeling it, sometimes just working with other developers or being around other developers gives you that motivation. So, yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, I feel like we covered everything I wanted to cover. This is a good conversation. I really hope more women actually heed your advice and they take it seriously. And like the enemy to a lot of people just trying to be successful, it's victimhood. It's a perspective,
Yes.
a mindset that constantly blocks you in life. It's when you're blaming external circumstances. You got to realize it's easy to see people in certain positions and think they've had it easy, but you have no idea the adversities they've overcome. You have no idea, right? Until you actually get to know them. Their race won't tell you that. Their gender won't tell you that. None of that will tell you that. But, you just kind of see the end result and it's easy to make assumptions, but it really isn't just about being critical of yourself and understanding you have a lot more control over your future than
Oh, yeah.
some people give you credit for.
I mean, it's so easy to fall for the trap because there's so many sources and so many different regions that are constantly telling you it's because of this, it's because of that, it's because of this, and it's never going to be fair, blah, blah, blah. But just like, I don't have any social media for a reason. I cut all the noise out. It's like, get it out of my life. This is a time killer. This is like polluting my mind with negative thoughts that are unnecessary. And, like, people are like, oh, they have the whole stereotype like white males will have it easier, blah, blah. Okay, my brother, my little brother, okay, he's a white male in tech, right? Highly, highly up in his position. He earned it, trust me. As someone who has seen him in his entire life, like he was in the military, he had no friends growing up. He was spending all day and night doing every side project you could ever imagine and more. Like he earned where he's at. Nothing was given to him. I can't say this for everyone, but I know for him for a fact, he earned it. And I'm just going to assume people who are in positions like that probably had the same like life as him, like working every single minute of his life from 17 to 30, you know what I mean? So like, just focus on yourself. Because I can tell you right now, he wasn't focusing on anyone else. He was focusing on himself. And that's how he got where he is, so just, if the noise is drowning you, do what I did. Delete your social media and start just open up VS Code and GitHub and just focus on that. Just do that.
That's probably the best advice of this episode. That's awesome. All right, cool. Well, hey, Zynkah, I really appreciate you coming on. I want you to stick around for a couple minutes. We'll just touch base. But before we head out, shout out your stuff. Where can people find you?
Okay. Well, like I said, I don't have any like instas or anything, but you can find me on Twitch at Zynkah right there. And that's pretty much where I am Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. Central Time. Sometimes it kind of wiggles and matters like on my schedule, but usually 1 p.m. And I have a little Discord community, which you can guys get and chat in there. Small, but it's growing. But yeah, other than that, that's kind of all I do. You'll find me in his chat too, so if you want to talk to me. Oh, and I have a LinkedIn too, I guess I have a LinkedIn. My name is, I think it's going to be in the title, right? Like my real name.
Yeah, we could do something like that. I'll usually provide the links in the
whatever.
description.
Yeah, we'll just put it in the description. My real name will be in the description. I'm the only one who shows up. I'm easy to find. So
Perfect.
yeah. But yeah,
Okay.
that's where you can find me, LinkedIn and Twitch.
All right, sounds good. Zynkah, I really appreciate this. And anyone watching, just leave a comment below. What do you think? I feel like when we get into diversity stuff, I talk about victimhood a lot. I talk about a lot of controversial issues, and I kind of combine them all. And but I think these are important conversations, and it's because I've helped thousands of aspiring developers of all walks of life, and I'm just, I see what works and I see what doesn't. I know what perspectives hold people back. I know what perspectives don't. But if you disagree, let me know in the comments. But yeah, Zynkah, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, definitely. Anytime.